Hey guys, thanks for coming back and joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. Glad to have you back. So, for those that catch our podcast on video, you can see I'm in a little different setting today. This weekend, we had unfortunately, a close personal friend passed away, and we traveled. So, we're here for the funeral next week. So, be back to normal on Wednesday, but wanted to make sure we got a podcast episode out. We only call that out because we talk a lot about overcoming obstacles and fighting through difficult times, et cetera, et cetera. So, real life example here of us doing what we preach. So, wanted to just call it out real quick and let you know why you see things a little bit differently. So, today's episode, we're going to talk about 3 books that you can study to help improve your mindset. And I say study instead of read. We'll talk about that, the difference in a little bit. But, personal growth, nonstop process. We all go through periods where we get stuck in a rut, circumstances are difficult, or we just take our eye off the ball, right? All that stuff is normal. It's not abnormal. It happens to everybody. It happens to us plenty. And we have to course correct ourselves and kind of fight our way back to where we want to be and get back to kind of that continuous self-improvement mindset. So there's lots of resources by which you can continue to pursue that mindset. And we wanted today to share 3 books that we have read that we still refer to. And we've shared some of their tips and thoughts through the podcast here on how you can improve your mindset, how you can learn to be fact-based, how you can change your habits, how you can drop the habits you don't like and pick up habits that you do like. We talk a lot about mindset because the mind is the most important part of the whole deal. How you think about things and how you react to the things that happen in your life is absolutely going to change the trajectory of your life. And so we spend a lot of time on mindset because we know it's the most important part. When we've been successful in our lives, it's because we've had a good mindset and a growth mindset for a long period of time. And when we've struggled or failed, it's largely because our mindset has not been great and we've taken our eye off the ball and we've allowed things to happen that we wouldn't have allowed to happen if we were thinking about them in the right way. So we always want to push ourselves to get better. We always want to kind of focus on continuous improvement. And there's various ways and resources you can use to do that. So we like to think our podcast is something that you can use to kind of remind yourself on a daily basis. Hey, let me think about this a little bit differently. Let me make sure. Let me just do a double check on my mindset here. You can research a lot of stuff online. There's lots of good stuff online. There's websites from psychologists and websites from therapists and websites from successful people. There's all sorts of content out there. You got to be careful on that because you got to be careful on who you take advice from and who you listen to. And, like we've talked about on here, we're not therapists, we're not psychologists, we're not trained in any of those things, but we are people that have had success in our lives. We've had failures in our lives. We've learned from those. I've been in a successful relationship for a long time. Been successful in the professional world for a long time. Also had setbacks in the professional world for a long time. And another resource that we refer to regularly are books. And so like we talked about at the beginning, there's a difference between reading a book and studying a book. When you study a book, well, let's take a step back. When you read a book, you pick up the broad strokes of what they're looking for, but it's easy to miss a lot of the detail and it's easy to miss a lot of the nuance. And the books we're talking about here have pretty concrete steps and ideas for you to grasp and follow. And so we're recommending that you study these books, read them slowly, read them more than once, take notes as you read them, think through the real world examples that you can apply to the concepts that are presented in these books, and really think about how you can apply the concepts you're picking up in your everyday life. Think about ways maybe you've applied these concepts before and you've had good outcomes. Or maybe you haven't applied these concepts before, but you can think of circumstances that you could have applied them and maybe gotten a different or better outcome than the one that you got in that particular circumstance. So think about studying these books because having the information is great. We're not saying don't research. We're not saying don't look at things. We're not saying any of those things. But if you don't take action on what you learn, if you don't fight to bring it into fruition in your real life, you're kind of just wasting time. Like I hear a lot of people say, I'm working on it. I'm researching, I'm organizing, and those things are great. We're not saying don't do those things. but there comes a point where you got to pull the trigger. There comes a point where you've got to put it into action in your everyday life. And talking about it and thinking about it and writing about it, those are all great, but at some point you have to take action. And so that's what we like about these books is they give concrete examples and concrete steps that you can take and incorporate into your day-to-day life. So that's why we recommend them. That's why we're saying study these books instead of reading these books. But don't forget that last step because it's the most important part. You've got to take action. You've got to take your shots. So we're going to talk about the books, but we put a brief summary in here. We did not write these summaries. I took these summaries off of book summary websites and in a couple of instances in the Atomic Habits and the Mindset websites or the Mindset book. We took them from the authors and or their resources. So who better to tell you what their book is about than the person that actually wrote the book? And once again, we've read all these books, which is why we're recommending them to you. We found value in these books, and we're hoping that if you read them, you will as well. So the first book we're talking about is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Now, this is an old book. This was written in the early 1900s, but many of the concepts are absolutely correct and still apply right now. And that's because human nature doesn't change. People at their core don't change. What motivates us all does not change. I will say that in Think and Grow Rich, which was authored by Napoleon Hill, he talks about sexual desire being by far the biggest driver of human behavior. We actually agree with that. I think that sexual desire and the kind of instinct and desire to procreate drives so much of what we do. And it's a little bit outlandish the way he writes about it in the book. And his concept is you need to take that desire that you have and funnel it towards other, not just the physical act of sex or reproduction, but funnel it towards other productive and useful activities. Now, there's something to be said for that, but I'm just warning you that it seems a little bit outlandish reading it in 2024, and it was written in the early 1900s. So it's a classic work on how to lead the summary, a classic work on how to lead a successful life. It was written at the commission of Andrew Carnegie and is based on interviews with men such as Henry Ford, J.P. Morgan, and John D. Rockefeller. So these are, titans of the early 20th century. Henry Ford obviously founded the auto industry in essence. J.P. Morgan at one point loaned the American government money because it was bankrupt, and he had so much money he actually loaned money to the federal government. So he was a banker and a business person and kind of a mergers and acquisitions guy. Purchased U.S. Steel from Andrew Carnegie, which made Andrew Carnegie the richest man in the world at the point. And then John D. Rockefeller founded Standard Oil, and at one point was the wealthiest man. He's one of the wealthiest men that's ever existed in relation to the net worth that he had in the period that he had it. So these are folks that were super successful. And this book lays out the steps that you should take to develop your potential and building your individual confidence and set goals. So each chapter addresses a principle to leading a meaningful and productive life. And it's called Think and Grow Rich. And if you want to get rich, great. We're not saying don't try to get rich. We're not saying that you shouldn't pursue that. We're not saying any of those things. But I think more importantly, the thing to focus on in this book is regardless of whether you apply these steps towards your financial or economic future, your personal future, your physical health, whatever you apply them to, there's great concepts in this book. And it's really about taking accountability for your life and not waiting for someone else to tell you what to do, not listening to detractors, not listening to people who want different things at you, who are insecure or want to tear you down for pursuing self-improvement. And so we think there's a lot of valuable lessons in the book, Think and Grow Rich. I know tons and tons of successful people that have read this book. I'm sure tons of unsuccessful people have read it as well. But the point being, there are great concepts in this book. There are concrete examples in this book. And we highly recommend it if you're looking to kind of continue to improve your life and improve your thought process and your mindset. So that's the first book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Readily available, all sorts of, obviously you can get it on Amazon, but it's very easy to access. It's very easy to get to. So That's number one. So the second book is called Atomic Habits by James Clear. We read this book, I don't know, it was 7, 8 years ago. Read it a while ago, and I still refer to this book on a pretty regular basis. So this is almost a how-to book on how to break habits you don't like and establish habits you do like. Now, the steps are there, and like we've talked about, you have to actually be the one that does the work. So you have to take action and you have to make things happen in your life. So it's not enough to read the book. You're not just going to absorb it by osmosis and have all things change around in your life. You have to take the steps. But in the book, he talks about a small improvement every day compounds over time. So in essence, little changes compound over time to deliver big results over a long period of time. So it's like losing weight, like we've talked about. You didn't gain 50 pounds overnight, so you can't lose it overnight, but you can lose a little bit every day. And 6 months from now, you look up and go, hey, I've lost a lot of weight. This is good. Or it's developing a particular skill. You're not going to just instantly get good at something. Like I've talked about it on the channel before. I played baseball in college, and I picked up a bat when I was 3. And I used to work very hard on my own. I would throw a tennis ball against my garage door to work on my pitching. I would beg my dad to take me up and throw me batting practice and hit me grounders so I could work on my fielding and my hitting. I did a lot of work to get good at baseball. Now, I was born in a good physical body to play sports. So I'm a big guy. I'm naturally strong, but I lifted a lot of weights. I did all sorts of conditioning. I did a lot to improve on the natural abilities that I was born with. And that's the framework of Atomic Habits is you're not confined to where you are. There's a framework you can use to get rid of habits that you don't want and develop habits that you do want. So it's called the 4 Laws of Behavior Change is how he refers to it. And the book teaches you the simple set of rules, creating good habits and breaking bad ones. So you can go to his website, Atomic Habits. If you Google Atomic Habits, it'll take you right to his website. It's a guy named James Clear. And he's got an interesting backstory. He also played college baseball, but he had a very serious physical injury and fought his way back from injury to pursue his baseball career. And he has spoken with all sorts of professional teams, all sorts of corporate entities. And so his framework, we find it super helpful, super accurate, and super useful. So we highly recommend Atomic Habits. And again, I can't stress enough, this is almost like a how-to book. It gives you step-by-step instructions with real-world examples of how you can apply these concepts in your life to get rid of habits you don't like and to develop habits that you do like. So we think it's a great book. We find it super useful, and we highly recommend reading it. So it's absolutely worth your time if you choose to read that book. So, and then the last book we have called Mindset by Carol Dweck. And Carol Dweck is a Stanford-trained psychologist. She's got decades of research behind what she produces in this book. And we thought this was a good summary from when we read it. We thought this person did a good job of summarizing this book. Number one, skills can be cultivated through effort. So you are not, the whole concept of the mindset book is that you can either have a growth mindset, meaning there's more out there and I have to go get it, or a fixed mindset. I was born with whatever I was born with, and I'm never going to rise above where I'm at right now. Clearly, we fall in the growth mindset category. We're encouraging you to develop the growth mindset. But these are all steps that you can take, or things that she points out to drive home the point that the growth mindset is where you want to be, and the fixed mindset will hold you back and limit what you can get out of life. So point one, skills can be cultivated through effort. 100% agree with that. And you should agree with it too. You weren't born knowing how to walk. You walk just fine now. You weren't born knowing how to run, to drive a car, to read, to write, all the things you can do now. Those are things you develop. So there's all sorts of proof in your life that you can cultivate skills through effort. But as we age and we become adults, we put very limiting thoughts into our head. Oh, I can't do this. I can't do that. That was something I had to do when I was younger. Bullshit. Like, unless it's being a professional athlete. Like, my days of ever being a professional athlete are gone. I'm 52. It's a young man's game, no different than being a model. There's just certain physical limitations that happen as you age, and you can no longer compete at the level that you can compete at. But short of that, there's almost nothing that you can't do. You're just telling yourself you can't do it. And those skills can be cultivated through effort. Number two, people with the growth mindset thrive on challenges. They don't just seek out challenges, they thrive. So that's the competitive nature in you. That's the, I'm going to find a way to get this done. I'm going to set my feet and I'm going to drive forward. People with a growth mindset thrive in those environments. And if you're unhappy, if you are stagnant, if you look at your life and say, I want more out of life, you've probably forgotten that or minimized it. And it's a good reminder reading these books. It's a good reminder that, hey, I have total control over this. I am responsible for the circumstances that I'm in right now. I also have all of the capabilities and requirements that are necessary to get myself out of or improve on the circumstances that I'm in right now. You just have to take action and do it. And that's how people with growth mindsets think. And that's what you want to develop in your life. And the third is the fixed mindset is I can't do it. The growth mindset is I can't do it yet. And there's a big difference between those two. And I think it's pretty obvious. So we thought that was a good summary. And then, so there's 5 big ideas in the book. And we've got those listed out here. Number one, of yourself profoundly affects the way you lead your life. So if you don't think you're good enough, you're right. You're not good enough. If you think you're good enough, you're right. You are good enough. Henry Ford has a famous quote that he said, whether you say you can or you can't, you're right. And that's one of the big ideas in this book is that your self-talk and the way you think about the world, go back to the third point we just talked about. I can't do it yet, but I'm going to figure out how, right? So that's a good place to be. Number 2, believing that your qualities are carved in stone, the fixed mindset, creates an urgency to prove yourself over and over again. So the challenge there is, instead of setting the bar high and missing it just below the bar, a lot of times people set the bar really low and hit it. And then they say, well, I hit it. I'm done. That's all I can do. I can't do anymore. Think about how many times in your life you've told yourself, I can't do X or I can't do Y. And then you wind up doing X or Y. And you kind of forget that, hey, I told myself at one point I couldn't do this. Even little things. There's mental blocks that pop up all the time in our lives. And it's up to us to push through those mental blocks. So that's one of the, believing in your qualities, believing that your qualities are carved in stone. Got to get past that. You can rewrite what's on the tablet. You have the hammer and the chisel. You have to get to writing. 3, we've talked about this already. People in the growth mindset don't just seek challenge, they thrive on it. So they embrace the challenge. They say, hey, this is going to be tough, but I'm going to dig in and get this done. And that's why it's important to pursue things that are important to you. Because if you're not committed to it and you don't actually want to do it, those challenges and those obstacles, they're going to prevent you from getting where you want to be. And if that's the case, maybe you're pursuing the wrong stuff. There's nothing wrong with changing course and saying, hey, you know what? I thought I wanted this, but I actually don't. But don't let it be because it's hard. Don't let it be because the obstacles seem tough. If it's something you really want, get after it and chase it. And don't quit until you get to where you want to be. And that's what people with a growth mindset thrive on. I'm going to find a way. It's interesting because a lot of successful people will tell you, it's the journey that I look back on with the most fondness. It's the scrapping and fighting and clawing to get to where I was at, not the ultimate goal. Is the ultimate goal nice? Sure, it's nice. But that's actually not what you appreciate. You appreciate the work and the effort and the sacrifice you made to achieve the ultimate goal. That's where the growth mindset plays its biggest role. Number 4, the growth mindset does allow people to love what they're doing and to continue to love it in the face of difficulties, like we just talked about. If you're pursuing the right stuff, it will be worth it. I've been married to my wife for 30 plus years, and for the vast majority of those times, we've been happy and things have gone well. We've had some pretty big stuff thrown at us as well. And we've never questioned our relationship. Our relationship is at the center of our lives, and it's always been the bedrock on which we build our lives. With that said, we've had some really challenging stuff, financial stuff, health stuff, personal stuff. Like, life is tough. Life is going to kick you in the teeth every once in a while. And you've got to be able to take the standing 8 count, go back in the ring, and re-engage in the fight. And the growth mindset allows you to love what you're doing. It allows you to embrace the hard work. It allows you to embrace the suck. There's a book written by a Navy SEAL called Embrace the Suck. And that's kind of the concept of it, is if you learn to really like and value the hard work and the hard times, you're going to be so much more happy and you're going to be so much more successful, because you're going to push through things that make most people quit. And it's on the other side of that pain that the reward is. But most people don't get to it because they quit when it gets hard. They quit when it starts to hurt. And people with a growth mindset embrace that and say, I'm going to fight through because I know there's something on the other side for me. Number five, those with the growth mindset found success in doing their best in learning and improving. And this is exactly what we find in the champions. So, that's kind of a recap of all the things that we've talked about on here. And I can tell you, I worked really hard when I played baseball, and I got to a level that most people never get to. And there's guys that went further than me. There's lots of guys that made a living playing baseball. I never did that. And I knew when I met my wife that my relationship with her was by far the most important thing in my life. Baseball just wasn't important to me anymore. And so to continue to lift and run and make no money and live in shitty little apartments in minor league towns was not appealing to me anymore. So I didn't do it. And I don't regret it for a second because I have a great relationship and a great family and a great life. And I have zero doubts. I've never, ever looked back on it and thought, shit, I made a mistake. Now, if I was single, if I did not have the relationship with my wife, you would have had to drag me out of the clubhouse and I would have been holding on to the door trying to keep my spot on the team to get me out of there. I loved everything about it. I never minded the weights. I never minded the running. I never minded the hard work that it took for me to go out and compete again. And you need to develop that mindset and apply it to whatever it is you're pursuing. If it's a personal goal, if it's a professional goal, if it's a health and fitness goal, it doesn't matter what it is. But you've got to learn to embrace the hard work that it takes and think this is going to be worth it when I get the payoff. When I get to the promised land, this is all going to be worth it. And like she talks about in the book, that's what champions do. When you look at champions, they fought and scratched and clawed to get to where they're at. It was not handed to them. It was not easy. They had to overcome a lot of adversity, whether they were champions in business, whether they were champions in the professional world, whether they were champions in their relationships. It doesn't matter what it is. That same trait is common, and it's in all of those areas in people's lives. And the people that are successful learn to embrace it and learn to accept it. So think it's a really good lesson to learn. So there's our books. Those are the three we think they're definitely worth you taking a look at. We've read them. We read them over and over again. Like we've read these books multiple times, and we think there's a ton of value in there to add to your toolkit as you're working on improving your mindset and improving your life and really building the life that you want to live. So hope you get some value out of that. I hope you're able to check those out. Don't forget to head over to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All of our podcast episodes are available there. All of our links to our other social media are on there. And then we've got a daily newsletter that we publish every weekday. And you can subscribe to that on our website. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on whatever platform you consume our content on. It's sure helpful to us if you do that. So thanks again for coming back, guys. Really appreciate you being here. Everybody have a good week, and we will see you next time.